Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the Ollo S4R Headphone. These were loaned to me for review by Matthew Stringer, and I just wanted to say thanks again for the equipment loan. I've had these about 5 weeks now and had quite a bit of time to listen to them. Ollo Audio is out of Slovenia, and this headphone currently sells for 290 euros, which works out to about 347 US dollars at today's exchange rate. This is a full-size, wired, over-the-ear, closed-back headphone, and it uses a 50 millimeter dynamic driver. It has an impedance of 32 ohms. The sensitivity is listed as 108 decibels at 1 milliwatt, and as it sounds, these are very easy to drive. They're very sensitive, doesn't take much power at all. The weight is claimed to be 310 grams, and they actually weigh in on my kitchen scale at 326 grams without the cable, but we're pretty close there, so I'll give that to Ollo. The ear cups are made of a solid chunk of American walnut that it's machined out. This isn't a veneer, this is a solid piece of wood, and the backs, I believe, are aluminum. And the ear pads are a synthetic leather, and they're actually very soft and very comfortable. The cable is a 2 meter long detachable cable. I'll give you a look at that. At the amp end, you have a 3.5 millimeter connector with a screw-on 6.3 millimeter adapter. And then at the headphone end, you have 2.5 millimeter plugs. And I did want to mention that this headphone is currently going through a revision. I think the new revised version of this is about to come out, and I don't know what the changes are, but if they asked me, I would suggest go to 3.5 millimeter plugs. The reason why is a lot of headphones are using the 3.5 now. So most people are going to have different cables with 3.5 millimeter connections, and that way you can swap cables around. The only other headphone I've had so far with 2.5 millimeter would be my Hi-Fi Man HE560 that I've had for, I don't know, maybe three and a half years now, and that was the version 2 of that headphone, but not many using 2.5. Hi-Fi Man did for a while, but so if they are revising this, my suggestion would be go to 3.5 millimeter. Did want to show you the headphone a little more up close. Like I said, the ear cups are walnut, the ear pads are a synthetic leather, it has a self-adjusting strap, and I believe the headband is stainless steel, but it is painted or coated black. They swivel at the ear cups, and they're actually very comfortable. It appears to be a really well-built headphone. There's no defects, anything. The materials are nice, and they are very comfortable. And the clamping pressure, I would say, is just about right. It doesn't clamp too hard that it's uncomfortable, but they don't move around. You don't have to worry about leaning over and having them fall off or anything. And the ear pads are actually very comfortable. They're a little bit on the small side. This is a small headphone for over the ear, but and the ear opening isn't huge. So I have to kind of move them a little around, get my ears situated, because it is important you get a good seal around your head. It does affect the sound, it affects the level of the bass, and it also affects the isolation, which is the next thing I wanted to talk about. This headphone is sold as a studio monitor. That's what it's intended for. And being a studio monitor, you want to not only keep outside noises out of the headphone, but you want to keep the music in, and it works very well at that. The isolation both of keeping outside noises out and inside noises in is probably better than any other headphone that I've listened to or reviewed so far. It does a really good job of cutting down on outside noise. Before I get into my opinions and my review of the sound, I did want to mention what equipment I was using for my review. Starting out, I get clean power from the Core Power Technologies power conditioners, and I'm using a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player as a transport. I'm using either the Benchmark DAC 1 as a DAC as for my digital to analog conversion, or the Topping E30 DAC. And my review, I used several different amps. My reference amp is the Audio GD Master 9. I use that quite a bit, and I did have a balanced cable for my Hi-Fi Man that I was able to use it from the balanced output of that. And then I'm also using the iFi ZenCan, which you can probably see on the desk behind me here. I've got that in for review. The Topping A50S, and I've got the Burson Playmate 2 in right now. So I've used at least 4, maybe 5 different amps reviewing this headphone. And then the headphones I use for comparison, my first impressions, I didn't really compare this to anything else. But myself, I can put on a pair of headphones and my ears, probably actually it's my brain, adjusts very fast, and most headphones will sound very good to me until I compare them to something else. And it's not until I compare to one of my reference headphones that I can really tell you how it sounds. So when I do my first impressions, I try not to do much of a comparison with other headphones, but for my final review, I definitely do that. So the 3 headphones that I primarily used in my comparison would be the Hi-Fi Man Sandara. The reason for that is the price is just about identical. The Sandara sells for $350, and I realize they're quite different headphones. You know, this is a closed back, Sandara is an open back, but the price is exactly the same. And the Sandara is a very popular headphone at that price. In fact, it's on my best of 2019 and 2020 list of best headphones for the price. So I definitely wanted to compare these 2 headphones. Also, I used the Fisher Audio M12S and the Kennerton Magni in my comparison. The Fisher, because it's sort of a similar headphone, I have the older version that actually has a grill on it and is considered an open back. But if you look through the grill, it actually only has a couple tiny little vents. So it's more of a semi-open back headphone. And then the Kennerton Magni is actually a very similar looking headphone to this. It has the wooden cup with the solid aluminum back. So it's very similar, but it is roughly twice the price, actually a little more than twice the price. But it's one of my favorite headphones, so I wanted to compare this headphone to that. Okay, so getting into the sound of this headphone, I'll start with tone balance. And I would describe this headphone as being basically neutral. Neutral with a slight bump in the mid bass and a slight roll off in the upper treble. Other than that, I would say it's pretty much neutral. Kind of a touch of warmth and a little bit of richness on the set compared to neutral. Just a little warm and rich from neutral. The detail and resolution of this headphone I would consider very good. It's not the absolute last word in detail, and I'll get into some of my comparisons in a few minutes, but it's up there. It does have very good detail. The imaging is good. I can pinpoint the instruments. There's good separation. I can locate where everything's coming from and nothing seems to blend together. It separates everything pretty well. The sound stage, I would consider medium size. It's not real large, it's a little bit, some people use the word intimate. I would say, you know, especially vocals, they're kind of centered. They don't really wrap around my head like some headphones do. But there is quite a bit of width. I'm still hearing sounds quite a bit out to the side. So I would say average as far as soundstage width, but actually pretty good for a closed back headphone, which are normally have less width to the soundstage. I would describe this headphone as very low fatigue. This is very easy to listen to. It's never harsh. The treble is not harsh. Like I said, the trebles is slightly rolled off a little bit. Just very pleasant, and I could listen to this headphone all day. Like I said, just a little bit on the warm side of neutral, and just very low fatigue. I'd never get worn out listening to this headphone, neither comfort-wise or music-wise. My ears don't wear out and my neck don't wear out. The weight of this headphone I weighed it in at 326 grams, but that still makes it one of the lightest headphones I've ever reviewed or worn. I did want to do a little bit of a comparison to a few other headphones, starting with the Hi-Fi Man Sandara. Like I said, they're about the same price. These are a little smaller and a little lighter than the Sandara, but they're both very comfortable. I have no problems with the comfort of the Sandara. The tone balance, I would also consider the Sandara real close to neutral, but maybe a little on the bright side of neutral in the treble. And the tone balance, comparing the two, I would say that the bass roll-off, the bass extension is probably about the same. Neither this headphone or the Sandara has fantastic sub-bass, but it is there. It's just, it's slightly rolled off compared to the mid-bass. Getting into the mid-bass, I would say this headphone has a little bit more punch and a little bit more weight in the mid-bass than the Sandara does. Getting into the mid-range, the Sandara, everything sounds just a little bit more forward, especially vocals, and especially getting into female vocals, which would be more up and higher into the mid-range. The Sandara is a little more forward, a little more pronounced, and the Sandara has incredible detail in the mid-range, and I would say it beats out this headphone just a little bit in the detail. This can't quite keep up with the Sandara in the mid-range or treble detail, but the Sandara can sound a little harsh at times with less than perfect recordings, especially in the treble. I really love the treble on the Sandara. The treble is almost perfect in my opinion, but I do, at my age, prefer a slightly bright treble, and I would consider this treble to be more neutral, where the Sandara is a little bit brighter. And there are a lot of people that find the treble on the Sandara to be too bright, and the mid-range on the Sandara is very detailed, but like I said, if the recording is less than perfect, it can get a little harsh and a little fatiguing. So the Sandara beats this headphone out a little bit in detail, especially in the mid-range and treble, but this headphone is a little bit warmer, a little bit more pleasant, a little more liquid sounding, where I would say that Sandara is a little drier. And this headphone does have a little bit more weight to the bass. So I've been recommending the Sandara for a long time as a great audiophile headphone, not for bass heads, but a very accurate headphone in the $350 price range. And I'd have to say that if the Sandara isn't the right headphone for you, if you find it a little bit too bright or a little bit too thin sounding or a little bit too dry, you might want to check this headphone out. It is very close in performance, but it's easier to listen to, less fatiguing, and a little bit more weight in the bass. And so, like I said, if the Sundara is a great headphone in my opinion, but if it isn't exactly what you're looking for, this may be. And I'm thinking about maybe even doing a shootout, sort of a comparison between this and the Sundara, because I do consider this a very solid alternative choice to the Sundara at that price. I did want to give this a quick comparison to the Fisher Audio M12S. And basically, they have a similar sound, and the M12S I'm using does have aftermarket ear pads on it. They're a leather ear pad that was made by Kennerton, and I've never seen them listed for sale. They sent them to me and let me try them. I think it was sort of a prototype. They're similar to the leather ear pads that come on the Magni, and they did improve the sound on the M12S in my opinion, but it's still a little bit lacking to me. And basically, I would say the M12S has better bass extension and more weight to the sub bass than this headphone, but getting into the mid bass, they kind of even out. And then in the mid-range and treble, the M12 rolls off a little bit too much for me in the treble. I think that's why I'm not absolutely crazy about that headphone. It's a little bit on the dark side for my personal taste. And the treble's a little brighter, a little more detailed. I did want to mention, going back to the Sundara does have more sparkle in the treble than this headphone does. But the Ollo has more sparkle in the treble than the Fisher Audio M12S. Basically, I would say that this headphone, in my opinion, I prefer this in just about every way to the M12S. Then last, I wanted to compare this to the Kennerton Magni, which is actually one of my favorite headphones, and it was my headphone of the year, my most bang for the buck headphone of 2019. It was replaced by the Kennerton Magni was replaced as my headphone of the year in 2012 by the LSA HP2, which was basically a revised, newer version of the Kennerton Magni, also made by Kennerton for LSA. So anyway, but back to the Magni, it's still one of my favorite headphones, and to be fair, the Magni cost about twice, even a little more. I think it's over $700 compared to the about $350 for this headphone. But the reason I want to compare it is, first of all, they look almost identical, except for the Magni being just slightly bigger and having real leather ear pads on it. But the Magni, slightly bigger, slightly heavier, but they're both very lightweight. They're both very comfortable. They're both very easy to drive. Back to the Hi-Fi Man Sundara. The Sundara does need quite a bit more power than these headphones do. So depending on what amp you're using, if you want to run off of a portable device, then this is going to be a lot easier to drive than the Sundara. So anyway, back to the Magni. The Magni, the bass extension is better. The Magni, in my opinion, has fantastic extension into the sub bass, and it does go lower than this headphone and definitely has more weight to the sub bass. The bass is pretty similar on the two. Getting into the mid-range and the treble is slightly brighter on the Magni. It does have more sparkle in the Magni than it does the Ollo. And the mid-range is a little bit more forward, and female vocals seem, I'm just hearing more detail, more texture in their voices, just pretty much all the way through the mid-range. I'm hearing a little bit more detail through the Magni than I do through this headphone. I'm not saying that this headphone lacks detail, but the Magni is very detailed. It's up similar to the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, but a warmer, smoother sound than the Sandara. So anyway, the fact that this is close to the Magni, though, is actually saying a lot about this headphone, because the Magni is one of my favorites. I'm going to have to pause this video again. My phone's ringing. Sorry about the interruption. I'm shooting this a little earlier in the evening than I usually do, and got a phone call in the middle of my video. So anyway, I'll continue from there. I was talking about the Magni being just a little bit more detailed and a little brighter in the treble, and just a little bit more sparkle. And I will be honest, I prefer the Magni in just about every way to this headphone. But like I said, the Magni is one of my favorites. The Magni is over twice the price. So if the Magni at something like $750 is out of your price range, you can get about 90% of the way there with this headphone for half the price. So what does it come down to? Yeah, I can recommend this headphone. I really like this headphone. And I do think it's a solid competitor with the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, which is the same price. And I think that for people who think the Sandara is just a little bit too bright, or a little bit too thin sounding, or needs a little bit more bass, that this headphone might be ideal for you. So I'm probably going to try to put together a quick comparison before I send this back. This was loaned to me by one of my viewers, and I really appreciate that. It wasn't a dealer or a manufacturer, just someone that watches my videos and gave me a chance to review a headphone that I hadn't had an opportunity to listen to. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. And once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you're all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We're at about 9,700 members. I'd like to see you all over there. Once again, thanks for watching my video.